All right, all right. No one hear me? There we go. Maybe that's the right microphone. Can everybody hear me? How are we doing tonight? Well, you never know, Estelle. Sassy is really attracted to the music. Who's Sassy? Do I want to know? Ah, it's been a week, hasn't it? Had quite the week. Some good news coming up, I think. Hetman has a pretty cool job interview. Gets it might radically change availability, which already wasn't great. His ability to do work on the channel. We'll burn that bridge when we get to it, so to malproperism. Cat in your profile pic. Okay, fair enough. Avery can't hear the music because it's through the headphones, but I'm sure he'd be irritated by it like he is by everything else I do. But Hetman has a job interview on Sunday, so wish him luck. It's actually a pretty cool opportunity. It's with a resource that we've used here on the channel multiple times. And so yeah, we'll figure out what that all means for two guys talking history. Tonight, I talk to you about a little something different. I kind of want to talk to you about genocide studies because there's been some confusion, and that's generous. There hasn't been really some confusion so much as there has been some deliberate obfuscation of a concept in order to try and make a stupid point seem relevant. That's really what's going on, and so we're going to talk a little bit about genocide studies, but we're also going to talk about logic a little bit, and not really logic in the formal A and B is root with C type sentential logic sense, but we're going to talk about logic in kind of the rhetorical sense. How to recognize when someone is trying to lie their little pants off. And this is a story that begins, as all horrible stories do, on Twitter, or X as it's now called, which is fast becoming the #1 hole in the wall for right-wing figures everywhere, including figures who claim to be somehow not right-wing, but still are. And one of those particular figures is someone you can't really avoid if you're going to talk about politics or history these days. It's Destiny. Why? Because he sticks his little nose in everything he does, irrespective of whether it should be there or not. So Destiny, the person who a few months ago couldn't find Israel on a map, Excuse me while I sip my coffee. I couldn't find Israel on a map and thought some variation of Aragorn, which is a king of Gondor, and the reunified kingdom of Arnor, and not a world leader, was the president of Israel or some crap. I don't know. Destiny decided to come out with this banger of a reply. Because mass murder isn't genocide. True. The two have almost nothing to do with each other. I'm not sure where we're getting this, but of course, naturally, everyone decided that this is something that should be argued about. So let's take this one at a time and talk about this in a real technical sense for a hot second. Because mass murder isn't genocide. Absolutely. Here's the thing about mass murders. Mass murder is somewhat ineffectively defined, I would say the argument is. Technically, at least in the United States, a mass murder is defined as any murder in which a number of people, being at least 4, are killed in a short period of time with no cooldown period between the killings. So basically, it's when a sufficient number of people have been murdered at one time. And this is a somewhat catch-all. It's not like it's a specific crime. It's not like it's a specific crime, mass murder. It's not like it changes the details of what you get charged with should you commit a crime of this scale. But, like, consider this. The shooters who entered into Columbine and shot up the school and kind of sort of highlighted for us the age of the school shooting in a particularly dark and horrifying way, get categorized in the exact same category as a shooter who walks into his family home and murders his wife and 2 kids and his nephew. It's a weird category, right? Mass murder is a somewhat difficult term to nail down in a certain level. Is mass murder genocide? Not strictly speaking. No, not really. Genocide is a number of things that are defined by a UN convention on genocide, of which mass murder can be part of that, but mass murder isn't inherently genocide. But here's the trouble with this thing. Had he stopped there, he probably would have been fine. Mass murder isn't genocide. The two have almost nothing to do with each other. See, here's the thing about this particular statement. It's kind of designed in a very specific rhetorical way, and you see a lot of internet debaters do this a lot. And it's why you see people who get into these debates advocate preparation. I understand when things. But what Destiny is trying to do is invoke a category where associate mass murder as a category, not associated. It's kind of trying, the category error is a fallacy where you assume that something is part of it might make a component of a larger whole, entails the entire whole. Almost nothing does a lot of heavy lifting there. Yes. Yes, no, it is doing a lot of heavy lifting at the end of the day. And he's trying to invoke this in order to get you to separate the two. And we've talked about genocide fairly extensively in the past on this channel. We did a whole month on it last January when we were kind of exploring what the Convention of Genocide was and Raphael Lemkin's ideas around genocide, right? So me and Hetman got on, we talked about genocide, both as a concept within the framework of international law and as it has been executed in the past, both in recognized cases and unrecognized. Concentrating primarily on the recognized cases, particularly Srebrenica in Bosnia, Rwanda, and in Cambodia with the atrocities of the Khmer Rouge. All of these things are recognized internationally under the convention. They were tried as such. They're directly by the criminal courts or by satellite courts set up for that specific purpose. The other half of that equation is that none of these things are very neatly organized. So you have a lot of people who advance frameworks of what genocide is that do not necessarily conform to the legal definition of genocide as per the 1948 UN Convention. And this is where the debate rages on, right? Like, this is where the genuine debate wages on. Because, and we here, like, we've made a lot of contacts with military historians and genocide scholars, principally because here at Two Guys Talking History, we are a military historian and a genocide scholar. So it's just, it's the circles, man. Just what happens. So I make the point that it's impossible to really say that genocide has nothing to do with mass murder, because every recognized genocide in the past, being those three, and the Holocaust and the Armenian genocide, have involved mass murder as a major component of the genocide. Enter Whick. Everyone knows who Whick is. You've all seen Whick. You've seen me on Whick in the past, although we won't be making that fucking mistake again, will we? Whick is competing with a whole bunch of other people to be Destiny's new chief squeeze, right? Because, and to be fair, that would be a good choice on Destiny's part. Whick is very unlikely to leave Destiny for a twink. But Whick comes up and says, and Whick wouldn't have said anything, really, had Sunday not said, wait, this isn't correct. Whick turns around and says, but Sunday is just trying desperately to say that Destiny is wrong. What Destiny actually meant to say, and then we were off to the races, and then Wag made the incredibly unfortunate decision to go into Whick court and talk about this. Don't do that. It's not okay. It's just never been to a more wretched hive of scum and villainy. Here's the point. Yeah, this general rule, guys. Do not go and argue with an idiot in their own fucking day. Gonna do that, draw them out into the open. Loner Box is Destiny's bottom bitch right now. Well, that's an interesting choice. There they are. I suppose they're going to be. They got like some impressive interviews, former prime ministers of Israel type interviews, right? While they're over there. However, there are so many former prime ministers of Israel still living in Israel because they go through them at a remarkably quick pace. And most of the former prime ministers of Israel are actually Benjamin Netanyahu. Surprise, it was him all along. But like they're like what's his face did the 2008 negotiations, Palestinian Authority, Olmert. The whole point is though, now to get back to it, is Whick goes, well, that's exactly what it is. Genocide does not necessarily infer mass murder. Okay, but that's not what Destiny said. Destiny said the two have almost nothing to do with each other. And then we get into this little thing where Whick is like, yes, but the Uyghur Muslims in China, the Uyghur genocide. And here's the trouble with that. My stipulation is that the genocide has to be recognized by an international body. This leaves us with 3 post the Convention of 1948. All 3 of those, like I said, involve mass murder. The Uyghur genocide, we don't know much about yet. Is it a genocide? Yes. Is it recognized? No. However, Whick decided to say, well, now you're just denying genocide. Like, no, that's not what's happening. I said a very specific condition by which one might have this discussion. You ignored that condition and decided to try to frame it in a disingenuous way. And like, this kind of happened overnight, and I didn't give much of a shit about it because it's not like anyone really cares about Whick. We have almost as many viewers as he had today at his height, and it's several hours past prime time, so go for it. But he turns around, and I ask, he decides to continue to press his luck. So I'm like, well, what about this? And I show him information about the sterilization of people of color and indigenous Americans in our prison systems in multiple states across the United States, which is, by and large, what the confirmed accusations against the Uyghur genocide, Uyghur Muslims, China against the Uyghur Muslims is. And Whick prevaricates, well, that's certainly like a genocide, and it's certainly evil, but he doesn't come out and call it a genocide. So his entire little argument is sitting here resting on a case of special pleading. According to jurisprudence, by cultural destruction is evidence of intent for genocide. Yes, that is the other half of this discussion that's happening somewhat on Twitter between Sunday and Whick, until Whick again decided to disingenuously frame the whole conversation. And then Whick ran from a debate with Sunday. Whick ran. Run, Whick. Run. I was like, yeah, cultural genocide is an entirely different thing. And as evidence for cultural genocide is the fact that the word culture is included in one of the articles of the UN Convention. And here's the trouble with this, and why I this is the kind of thing that you see lost causers do. Speaking of lost causers, Atenche Films brought out the last episode of Checkmate Lincolnites, which is very light on the history, but very long on an incredibly hilarious bit that he basically cribs every bad historical movie and every good movie that was ever made in the last 20 years. Go watch it after you're done here. Here's the thing that lost causers do, is they get really into the nitty-gritty of documents and try to argue that words don't mean what you think they mean. Yeah, we don't actually have any filters set up explicitly for words, which is probably a bad idea, but it's YouTube, not me. They get into this kind of thing like, well, did they say slavery? No, they talked about domestic institutions. Except that contextually, anyone who reads that document and has any real familiarity with the writings of the antebellum South will know that when you say domestic institution, you're talking about slavery. Stuff like that. That's kind of what we're talking about here. The genocide of a culture is a difficult thing to pin down, and it isn't really explicitly included in the way we tend to talk about it in the Convention on Genocide. So the Convention on Genocide, not to belabor this point, much beyond it. I'm going to bring it up again because it's relevant. 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide, and the PDF, which we have downloaded 5 million times, therefore don't have to do so again. Article 2 talks about how you technically define genocidal acts, right? In the present convention, genocide means any of the following acts committed with the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group as such. Killing members of the group, causing serious bodily harm or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent births within the group. This is kind of relevant for the Uyghur situation and relevant here in the United States with regards to our sterilization of prisoners. Forcibly transferring children of the group to another group, which is what's happening in Ukraine right now with regards to Russia, taking Ukrainian children and sending them to Russia. Here's the trouble with this problem, is speaking in the terms of culture. For example, if we're talking about cultural genocide, let's talk about for a second about the residential schools in Canada and their equivalents here in the United States, where indigenous children were taken from their families and put into these schools intent to quote unquote civilize. One of the key aspects of this that's kind of under discussed a lot is that the residential schools entailed the taking away of indigenous languages from people, having them not speak those languages, making those punishable acts so that people would not speak the language. And it had the net effect of causing a lot of languages to start to die out. On top of the horrible things where they killed children and buried in the backyard. This is problematic in a number of ways, because is denying you the ability to speak your language doesn't necessarily fall under Article 2. but it has a very profound effect on the ability of a culture to endure. And I think this is another point worth talking about with regards to Israel, for example, saw a renaissance of the concept of the Hebrew language founding. They have built a modern Hebrew language is a kind of touchstone to the past. It's a little Reverend Christie too, but that's beside the point. But I think in terms of like of the many things that come with Zionism, I'm not necessarily thinking this is a bad one. This is a strong touchstone that people can have to their culture and their religion. And language is a very effective way of bonding people together. It defines the way you think, right? The very terms in which you, the very profound connection that you have with other people who are like you. The other half of that coin is, for example, Gaza has a number of universities, or had rather a number of universities. They have been mostly destroyed, along with the vast majority of the rest of Gaza. And there was a particular case about a couple weeks ago where there was video evidence of the IDF going into a bombed out Gazan university library and burning the books there. And like we've all seen the memes of people complaining about the burning of the Library of Alexandria, despite the fact that by the time it actually burned, it was already a shadow of its former self. But like, there is a concerted effort being made, at least especially now that we see in Gaza, to destroy the touchstone of those people. I don't know if I want to make the same argument that imposing measures intended to prevent bursts within the group isn't a form of murder. It is functionally it is a highly insidious thing, right? When you get down to it. I don't think I want to call that a cultural genocide, because that cuts very deeply beyond culture. It is the destruction of a group physically. It is the inability of a bloodline to carry on. And that's principally like what one of the principal accusations of the Uyghur genocide. And I'm sure that Whick was just desperately looking for a genocide that you can't assign a death count to, which is sad. Also, I'm fairly certain, and I've spoken with some genocide scholars about this, no one who really studies genocide is not at all convinced that there are not mass deaths and starvations taking place in these basically what are slave factories in this region. So it's very likely, even if we don't have the evidence now because of how tightly it's controlled, it's very likely that mass death is taking place in China with regards to the Uyghur population. There is, and we've talked about this, the Genocide Convention is a rather narrow document when you get down to it. It excludes a great deal of behavior that the signatory countries did, that would specifically mark them out as guilty of genocide. You can make a very strong case for a very long sustained genocide of the indigenous populations in the United States, Mexico, and Canada, for forcibly transferring children. Yes, it is tied to preventing births, but it's also like, here's the thing. It's a principal disagreement you can get me and Hetman to argue about one day. Hetman is very attached to the concept of ethnicity, and I get really uncomfortable with the concept of ethnicity because on the other side of ethnicity tends to be some pretty messed up stuff. But at the same time, he recognizes a very strong connection that this brings to people between themselves. Again, this concept of shared ethnicity. And so even if people are necessarily doing like heinous shit under the concept of being ethnically pure, he sees value in it, just value in its moderation. And that's probably a fair position when you get right down to it. Forcibly transferring children of the group to another group is like another very insidious thing. It's a question of, I take a child, particularly a young child, and I remove them from an environment where they existed in before, and I put them in an entirely new one where they are exposed to different values, told different things. Uh, you can totally rearrange their identity. The Ukrainian child could never know that they're Ukrainian. If they are exposed to Russian propaganda telling them that Ukrainians don't really exist. A good example, I think, of like this in action is there's a Deep Space Nine episode. It's an early one where there's a Cardassian child, Bajoran custody, and Cardassian child was raised by Bajorans. He was raised to hate Cardassians. And the plot is irrelevant, but it tries to explore that concept. The exact episode escapes me. Early on, everyone's still wearing pajamas, so I'm pretty sure it's season 1. Not about the child, but the effect on the group. Yes, well, it is both. It is about both when you get down to it. Taking from the group the prospect of a future, a very real sense, children being the future of any group, and it's taking that from the child too. Genocide is a multifaceted crime. It is ultimately prosecuted on behalf of groups. However, it is not just about the group. It leaves individual scars and problems for people who experience it. There's a particular statistic about Israel that I found incredibly surprising. Most of the Holocaust survivors in Israel live in poverty. They were profoundly affected by what happened to them. It came to a society where they were sort of kind of venerated in a bad way, and they aren't cared for that well. In a not dissimilar way to how we treat our elderly who are not able to access sufficient retirement planning. It just kind of surprised me, considering the states of Israel's outward reverence for genocide, for the Holocaust victims. So the problem with culture is that it's very easy to destroy someone's culture. There are links to their culture. There are links to their culture without necessarily destroying the group through murder. That's possible, but it's not what's prosecuted crime. Well, yeah, a lot of refugees after the Holocaust didn't live. Yes, and that had a long-term effect on their ability to build wealth in that society. In the exact same way that if you had done that to a population such as recently unenslaved African Americans, would have done to them. Israel still, in a lot of ways, is a very dismal place. There's a very significant dichotomy between urban Israel and rural Israel. So that kind of brings us back to this. Because mass murder isn't genocide, okay. You want to quibble over what mass murder is? Fine. But let's just take a generous definition. The two have almost nothing to do with each other. That's a really hard argument to make, I think. And I think it's really disingenuous to try to defend this statement, particularly on the grounds that it doesn't really ring true. Most people, when they consider genocide as a concept, without getting into the nitty-gritty details, are going to think of the Holocaust. It's the example of genocide, and it involved mass murder on an industrial scale. But with that, we're going to move on because hilarious things happen to TomFoolery. And that should be fun. But we're first going to take a quick break, and I'm going to grab some water. So feel free to enjoy this interlude music.
Dance like a monkey. Move like a monkey. Shoot like a monkey. Kill like a monkey. Dance like a monkey. Move like a monkey. Shoot like a monkey. Kill like a monkey.
Alrighty, we are back. Hi, everybody. How are you today? Yeah. Insistence on intent is misplaced. Actually, that's worth talking about. Here's the trouble arguing about intent. I would say, for example, in the case of Israel, you have ministers and soldiers posting TikToks and ministers making public statements that demonstrate very clear genocidal intent, which people are trying to minimize by saying these aren't the people who are really matter in creating intent, which is kind of fucking nonsense. Onto it. Cool. You do you, boo. Intent, I think, matters in a certain sense because it's very possible to have a case where a large number of people die, but there was no intent to commit genocide by any particular party. There are cases where a large number of people are killed in war crimes and crimes against humanity, which are marked as distinct from genocide, that do not necessarily entail the slaughter of an entire group. Or, for example, multiple ethnic groups can be subject to mass slaughters, such as in Afghanistan, with the case of the Soviets. There are a lot of holes in the UN definition of genocide, which is why a lot of talk is sometimes put around what is and is not a genocide, or there is a certain extent to try to concept back, because there is a recognition that Raphael Lemkin talking about an already very well established precedent in target ethnic, which is very fair. For example, one of the same genocide scholars I was talking to about this and I were getting into a discussion about indigenous American populations in the American Southwest who may have committed a genocide against a particular group that is actually so profound that has fallen into indigenous legend. There are stories in the Appalachian Mountains of the same thing. Both of those stories have fallen into the concept of paranormal legend. So, like, there's a lot more to discuss about that, and sitting at an ironclad definition is difficult. But to be fair, that's the term that Destiny has tried to set for his entire point in this discussion. Which means it's only right that if you're going to approach to start from there and work your way out. But enough about Destiny. He kind of bores me because he's very silly. This was pretty funny, to be all things considered. So, most of you probably know that how this started. One night, Origin of Language, or Logos, whatever the hell he's calling himself now, the little pretentious crap, hopped onto TomFoolery show, who's another silly little boy, and talked about how President Sunday is misrepresenting himself as a political scientist. And in the course of this conversation, which bored me so I couldn't finish it, it apparently came out that Tom is not been entirely honest about his own background, which has led to several days of clowning on TomFoolery, which I now wish to experience in its entirety with the rest of you, and I shall drag you along with me. Come, suffer with me.
The little compilation of
Let that load properly. You know it's going to be a good day in Sundayland when Squid Hat is on.
Okay, this is the host. See, Tom is a much more credentialed man than I am. Tom is a genius, an inventor, an entrepreneur, a nuclear physicist, an adventurer.
You forgot that Tom is apparently also extraordinarily humble.
Lover of women, and I hear of men. Let's continue.
Last night, Tom decided to rehash the argument that he never claimed to be an authority in linguistics.
What the hell is this?
While doing research, I found some never-before-seen lies that throws cold water on his claim, and some bonus memes. Let's dive in.
To me, describing why I made a gender doc in the first place was that I worked in linguistics.
Oh yeah, he had like a had like a 30-40 page gender doc that he claimed was used in schools. Me and Kid Not Kin and Ico Rules went over. It was bad. It was bad. It was so bad.
What China's doing to the Uyghurs doesn't have to be genocide to be wrong or evil. True, it doesn't. But it probably is in the context of what's we know so far. It probably is a genocide.
Bad.
Marketing.
Just trying to. This is why gender is sex, which is like.
Gave me an interest in linguist.
Gender is sex. The term wouldn't come. English departments. Why?
I'm not entirely certain why I would necessarily say, well, I have an interest in linguistics, therefore this gives me an intimate understanding of the biological and sociological distinctions of sexual expression and gender. That's kind of weird on its face.
Well, because we don't say that certain terms or things are sexed, right? But they are gendered. Why? Because when I say there she blows, I am not saying that Moby Dick has a vagina. Moby Dick has a dick. It's in the name.
In linguistics, and then gender happened to be the thing that was talked about here a lot. That I ended
Did you
up
go over the gender doc? That was like a year ago.
just doing years of studying on and reading on and all sorts of shit. But yeah, me describing to somebody that I worked in linguistic marketing again is not me claiming authority over anything. Breaking down rhetoric, and I was.
Just curious, what is linguistic marketing? Can evoke emotions, influence perceptions, and ultimately drive consumer behavior. That's language, y'all. That's not linguistics. That's just language. That's rhetorical skill. That's not linguistics. Did we change the definition of linguistics when I wasn't looking? Let's just check real quick. Study of human speech, including the nature, structure, and modification of language. Yes. Curious, I'm checking something really quick. Yeah, I'm gonna be perfectly honest. If you watch British panel shows, 9 out of 10 cats, and 9 out of 10 cats does Countdown, or Countdown generally, less entertaining than having Jimmy Carr be embarrassed on it. Susie Dent, the woman who basically lords over Dictionary Corner, she went to school for language, and is, for all intents and purposes, what comes to mind when I think of it.
I worked in what the title of the position was called linguistic marketing. Okay, my entire job was rhetoric. Okay, studying rhetoric, breaking down rhetoric, and I was a rhetoric coach on stream for a long time as well.
Is that when I think of you saying that you're a rhetorics coach?
Just to be clear, I haven't said that in a long time. Like, I felt like that was bad branding for me. So I stopped.
I haven't said that I am a. I don't even know what I could claim that's equivalent. Like what?
I say it's very bad branding for you. See, here's the people don't understand about credentials. Okay, this is why dumb people falsify their credentials. Credentials only give you authority if you've already demonstrated competence and somebody else is challenging you, or if you're trying to apply for a job with people who don't know you. Otherwise, credentials actually raise the bar for what you're expected to do. Has anyone ever seen it's called Rango? It was that Johnny Depp lizard movie? Yeah, Rango, the Western
gecko
one. He's like a chameleon, and he goes into this town. He pretends to be like this badass cow.
I could be a political scientist. I don't want to be a political. Look, women go on dates with historians that wear leather jackets and smoke cigarettes and soft packs. No one's ever said, I want to go date that political
cowboy or whatever. But as a consequence, people who like the challenge of killing badass cowboys seek him out. That's why you don't fake your credentials, because you're invited.
Wasn't that the Ballad of Buster Scruggs? Like, literally? That's the Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Not Rango. I didn't see Rango confessedly, but I'm pretty sure that's just the Ballad of Buster Scruggs. Not all historians are all virgins. What if Autist is not a historian?
Inviting people to scrutinize you. And if you make the kinds of gaffes that someone who doesn't have any expertise in the field you're pretending to have expertise, if somebody can spot those gaffes, that's gonna go very poorly for you. Whereas if you just say, hey, I don't know anything, I'm just interested in this topic, I'm just trying my best, then even if you...
Which is the argument I've made about Erudite in the past, right? She'd be a perfectly competent streamer if she didn't decide to try to claim she's some kind of psychology expert.
Make a fool of yourself. Nobody can accuse you of lying. So you can still build up. You don't have to like salvage your reputation afterwards. Armor a god.
A long time ago. But yeah,
Okay, whether or not you think it's bad branding, that doesn't necessarily mean you don't think you aren't one or weren't one. But when I think of, like, I feel like maybe either you have either said you were a linguist in the past, or
I said
that
I
you've
work in
studied
linguistics.
Okay. To me, even though you could say you worked in a department that's relevant to, it feels like there's some academic backing to that, even if you're not explicitly saying it.
No, I explicitly say I have no academic backing. I say this all the time. I specifically
If you didn't explicitly say, it was painfully apparent.
say all the time. I say I work in linguistics because I don't have a degree. Understanding social constructs better, because for me, like, I'm just a human. Humans are completely different from animals. We're nowhere close. Like, that's kind of how, like, you know, I was raised in the...
That's somewhat presumptuous, probably. The humans are completely different than animals. No, humans are very similar to animals in a lot of ways that we just tend to try to personify our way out of.
It's the kind of the thing I've always believed in. And so, like, the things that we believe in are just those things. They weren't like things that we constructed. They weren't things that came about, you know, because we decided. Like, they're just there. And then I started...
Oh, yeah, you make a pretty good point, Stephanie. I mean, people grow. You learn new skills, right? Anyone who's been in the workplace for any significant length of time will understand that they have acquired a large and significant set of skills outside of anything they might have considered that they prepared for, right? So, for example, I, for a time, worked in a gas station, and I acquired no new skills, but that's beside the point. But then I went on to work in a car parts store, where I learned about sales and how to sell people things. I learned all about, like, car parts, and I learned about supply chain. These are very, very significant. I wouldn't necessarily call myself, you know, a logistics manager or some shit like that. But I learned about these things, and I can go to a job and say, well, I did X, Y, and Z job, and it gave me insights into this particular system, and maybe I can take those insights and use it to help this job here. Like, that's usually the process we're talking about here. But, like, probably even more salient to this, because as I understand it, Tom was some kind of customer service call center adjacent person, apparently. I was a customer service agent for 6 years, and I slowly lost my soul in and of itself, and that was a profoundly devastating thing to do. Don't worry, I found it again. It was hiding under the couch the entire time. But, like, you learn different things at different jobs. I've took a lot of skills I developed at a call center, mostly talking to people when they don't know what the hell is going on and not giving them a chance to respond. And I brought them to streaming, for example. You learn different skills as you go through life. They don't necessarily make you like, I wouldn't go, well, I am a master rhetorician or something. Like, no, I'm just a dude who has a huge ego and talks on a microphone. A bad microphone at that.
going to school for what was called linguistic marketing.
And people
No,
specialists.
no, it doesn't. Okay, I work in linguistics. Definitions, we come
Don't
to
give a shit.
definitions based on colloquial
Yeah, so the academic backing. That's. I mean, I'm willing to give him a tiny bit of leeway here. If by academic backing he means he never claimed to be doing research or something, and that's his conception of what academia is, and not just like going to like a trade school. If he thought of it as like trade or vocational training, I can kind of see that a little bit. I think that would be.
I'm also going to point out that trade or vocational training is not easy. Like, people trying to undersell this. You have to pull in a lot of information to be good at trades. Trades are very math intensive usually. Never pretend that trade school is a soft option, guys. That's a tangent, but an important one. Because I see some people trying to pull that, and it's not cool. Trade school is hard. Trades are difficult, and they're essential. Plumbers make the world go round. Literally.
I don't think I'd hammer him on that one.
usages. Okay, gender is a word that we use to describe masculinity and femininity. And so with masculinity and femininity, those are words that we use to describe what is more likely from a male or what is more likely from a female, or just what we generally associate with it, like social what do you call it, like social norms. I have papers on this. I have videos that are male or what is. Okay, gender is a word that we use to describe masculinity and femininity. And so
No, it isn't. Gender is a word we use to... Masculinity and femininity are words we use to describe masculinity and femininity. Gender is how we classify them. And the assumption that we are running on there is that the only two possible classifications that you can gender are masculine or feminine, and that's not the case. It's not the traditional case in other cultures. It's not the case in our culture currently. That's not correct. No. Sorry, I had to check that.
So with masculinity and femininity, those are words that we use to describe what is more likely from a male or what is more likely from a female, or just what we generally associate with it, like social, what do you call it, like social norms. I have papers on this. I have videos that are used in colleges. And
Ooh, naughty boy.
See, that's still claiming academic authority, though, right there.
Ooh, can't say that. I have papers on this implies published papers. Nobody's really asking. I've got Google Docs on this. No, you mean papers on this. What did he say? He said they're used. Hang on.
To be fair, he may have been referring to the fact that he has read paper that, or he may be saying wrote those papers himself. It's not entirely clear from what he said, but you'd expect a linguist to make that distinction.
in colleges and in universities.
They're used in colleges and universities.
Videos that are used in colleges and in universities. So this right here.
Okay, see that is a claim to credentials. That is saying, listen to me, I have work that is used in these high level facilities. That's a bad one. See, that's not one I would do.
Yeah, that I would say it could be taken as that sentence, to be fair. However, I wouldn't necessarily imply that. He might have misspoke and say, I am in possession of papers that are used, would be like what he's trying to say. Maybe, possibly. It's unclear, but again, you would expect a linguist to make that distinction.
That's not one I would do. What I could say, truthfully, is that I've helped people set up lectures on stuff like Machiavelli and whatnot. Why? Because I've read a bunch of it. But I don't have work that's used in colleges. I don't have videos or papers that are used in colleges and universities. Most professors don't have papers that are used in colleges. That's a strong claim. That's a very strong claim. That's a mistake.
Is where like what I meant to do is like respond to all of the things that Hugh said before I got there. So this is all like
I'm going to put my angry Squiddleton on. That is a bit of a nay-nay there, Tom. That's not a thing you're allowed to do. You're not allowed to pretend you have material that's used in colleges or universities. That's telling people you're some kind of wunderkind. That's telling people that you actually have expertise in the field. You are making a credential of this.
Like gender is my specialty.
I would love to see them and read them.
Gender is my specialty.
Wait. Uh-oh. Tom. Don't do this, Tom.
Good Lord. And that he has gathered papers that are used there. Yeah, exactly. I have many, listen to me, I have many books on this subject that are in fact referenced in universities. Did you write them? No, but they're back here.
I can send them to you. Yes, I can send it to you. I like this is my this is what I focus on.
I read and talk to professors who deal with this shit. Like I'd love to read the papers that you're talking about because it sounds like fucking garbage.
Are all professionals?
Even if you're not explicitly saying it.
No, I explicitly.
Why would he say that? That's so dumb.
All right, I might have to retract my earlier statement. Maybe he did mean that he wrote the papers. Like, he's not clearing it up because he's just leaving the implication out there. Uh-oh, Tom, what are you doing, Tom? Tom, no, don't. Step back from the light, Tom.
That's so dumb. Like, why would you ever claim that about yourself?
They say I have no academic background.
Because here's the response immediately. Really, published.
I've written papers that professors have liked. I don't think they get used for anything. They're not published. I've written papers that other people have said are horrible. They're jerks. Don't worry about them. I don't think they get used for anything either. That's not the same thing, though. Like, everyone writes papers in college. I write a lot of papers. They usually write those papers in a caffeine-fueled haze the night before they're due. I'm not like, oh, Tom, this was probably a bad idea. You've walked into a trap, Tom. Run away while you can.
In what journal? Because now it's like, oh, okay. Because it's a simple. How did the universities or colleges get a hold of this? You're a YouTuber with a criminal history. What did you do? Oh, do you have a friend who claims to be in academia? Maybe. Who said they looked at your gender doc? Did they look at it in their office? Did they use your doc? Is that how they use the doc in a university?
I say this all the time. I specifically say all the time.
It's crazy. Like Brianna Wu lies about her credentials, claims to have a political science and journalism degree, doesn't. Kyla claims to have a master's degree, doesn't. When caught, claims to have a graduate degree, doesn't. When caught, says no, it's actually just kind of the equivalent, doesn't. Like there's so many like goddamn frauds. Like what is this? Why are you guys?
More to the point, I'm gonna kind of jump on this here. Again, you don't have to participate in a conversation. You don't have to be an expert. And like one of the things we try to do here is have a environment where people can talk without necessarily being an expert, or we bring on people to talk about their experiences, or we bring on experts and then listen to them extensively. A therapist, for example, for one, an abortion rights advocate. You don't have to be an expert to take part in a conversation. Enthusiasm can take you quite far. And it's why I always say you don't need a degree to be a historian. And you'll find other historians saying this as well. You just have to follow the process. And that's kind of what gets into it. Like, are you following the process? Good. Take the title. Are you not following the process? Don't. But don't try to claim expertise.
Is finding success doing this? It doesn't seem like it.
Hey, I work in linguistics because I don't have a degree.
When you were talking to Beckett the other day, you did say, I mean, this kind of gets to the linguistics thing, is that you were telling Beckett that you've written papers on linguistics. To me, again, even though you don't have academic...
No, I didn't say that. Okay, I work in linguistics. Definitions, we come to definitions based on colloquial usages. I have papers on this. I have videos.
Look at this guy. There's a guy in the bottom right. I love this this astronaut thing.
That are used in colleges and in universities.
So this right here is where
Look, he's bobbing up and down.
What
It's
I meant
amazing.
to do.
Oh, he's not anymore. It's
Maybe I need to go find a timestamp because that conversation was
I
like a
enjoyed
week
that.
or two, or well, probably only a week old. But you definitely said that.
The only thing that I said that I wrote papers on was the gender doc.
I might have
Your Google Doc doesn't count as a paper. Reviewer number 2 has not yet torn it to shreds.
to go back and look.
I want you to listen to that sentence again. That was a weird ass sentence. Listen to what he says here, okay?
The gender doc.
And was
Right here.
like a week or two, or well, probably only a week old. But you definitely said that.
Here.
The only thing that I said that I wrote papers on was the
Also, I want to point out that linguistically that sentence is problematic because he says papers, which is plural, and then he uses a singular gender doc. Am I being a nitpicky asshole? Yes. Don't lie. You love it.
gender doc.
The only thing that I said I wrote papers on was the gender doc. There's two ways to interpret this.
Yeah, but Karasu Whick has been also platforming Brianna Wu, who's basically the same thing.
The first is that he wrote multiple papers about his own document. I don't think that's very likely. I think the more accurate interpretation is this. What papers? I only said I wrote one paper. I didn't write papers. I mean, it was multi-pages, so if you printed it out, there'd be more than one paper, I suppose. And
That's some Wick level cope right there.
I guess technically, since they're like, stacked if you printed them and stapled them together, each of those individual papers would be resting on the...
Let's be frank. Let's listen to TomFoolery talk right now. TomFoolery is not printing out his paper and stapling it together, guys. TomFoolery is going to fucking Office Max, and he's walking into the print center. He's saying, I need you to put this document and spiral bound it for me, please. Between two transparent covers, please. I'll pay for it. That's TomFoolery at this point.
gender doc, right? There you go. Bob's your uncle.
I might have to go back and look, but I don't think that that's the case. And even if you're not explicitly saying it.
No, I explicitly say I have no academic backing. I say this all the time. I specifically say all the time. I say I work in linguistics because I don't have a degree. I don't have like a. I'm not like what you would traditionally call a linguist online. In the real world, yes, I can just say I'm a freaking.
You're not what they call a linguist, but you work in linguistics. Let's just let that hang there for a moment. Okay, carry on.
Freaking linguist, and it doesn't mean anything because I'm not acting in any sort of authoritative position. Here, I'm very specific to say I'm not an authority, as in like I have a degree and
I can bring up. You
literally did, though. You literally said, no, I know what I'm talking about. I got papers that are used in colleges. I got papers and videos that are used in colleges and universities. Why would you say that otherwise? What's the point? President Sunday, I am graduating next week with an actual master's degree. It's an MBA, but I'm still going to tell everyone that my degree is dedicated to President Sunday. As you should, young grasshopper. But I'm glad to see you are succeeding. I've trained you well.
Bring it up in conversation.
I choose this to dedicate this stream to, well, me, my favorite historian.
Congratulations.
As if it is an authority to be answered to. Like when we were having that conversation between me, you, Ozzy, Katie.
The student surpasses the master.
Dave,
yes.
You do kind of like bring that up as a point to say like, no, I know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Yes.
You need to be the one that's shutting up. But it's
A big fat bonus meme. Tom says, while working at a car wash, he invented mobile detailing as a concept and started.
Does he ever say what he means by work in linguistics? Apparently, he was briefly employed in the marketing division of Pizza Hut, is what I'm given to understand.
the first mobile detailing company, then sold his business.
Given the general decline of Pizza Hut as a franchise, I don't think I would put that on my public resume.
It's not a joke.
And at first we would it was a requirement that you had a water spigot or something that we could use that allowed us to wash the car. And then later, we started putting a, damn it, I forget what it's called. The word is like right on the tip of my tongue and I can't think of it.
Oh God, please make it stop.
What is it that you call like a big thing of water? It's
pond, ocean, lake, gravy.
Giant, like tank-like things that we would put on the trailer.
Water tank.
And then we were able to just hook our hoses up to it.
It's called a tank, isn't it?
And so we filled it up with water every single day. And then we were able to just take the reservoir with us to the person wherever they were now. So now we no longer needed them to have.
A reservoir is like an artificial lake. It's not a reservoir if it's in a if it's on a truck.
I suppose you could call it a reservoir, technically. Yeah, reservoir typically is fly or source, sure. But it's usually used to describe like a place that water fills, like a storm reservoir or a reservoir behind a dam. Like, is he's collecting rainwater to wash people's cars, which might not be very efficacious. Yeah, I kind of feel like water tank is probably the better term here.
Tom?
Of like a spigot and an electrical outlet for us to use. We needed the electrical outlet for our hoses, for our vacuums. We took wetbacks with us, and so we would take the wetbacks and then we would also hook up our hoses to their stuff. Anyways, this was called mobile detailing. I made it up. I just came up with the idea. Mobile detailing, we're going to do this, because I was running a car wash at the time, and I thought I didn't get along with the owner, and so I was just like, yeah, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to go do exactly this. I know the business now. I understand it. Wetbacks, you racist, Tom? Yes, that's what we call them, wetbacks. But anyways, so yeah, so I'd never heard of mobile detailing before. I don't know if...
Actually, I don't know what that means. Oh, it's a anti-Mexican slur.
If
anybody else had...
You did a car wash, is what you did. You did a car wash. It's called a car wash. It's a very popular concept. You can find them everywhere. There's a fucking song about it. I'm flabbergasted. I think I miss what a fault is.
Started it before me. I'm pretty sure I invented mobile detailing. It exists now. Like, there's other companies that do it now.
Kids do it to raise money to go to fucking band camp. We did it now. Oh my god! What? Huh? I don't. He got on stream and claimed to invent the car wash, guys.
But at the time, I invented it.
Tom is just now confronted on his claims live on Resi stream. Is he live currently? I gotta get in on this. Okay, I'll be right back. I gotta pee. All right, we're getting in. We're just waiting for Sulfur's statement to finish for some reason. I don't know what that means.
Okay,
That
cool.
he lied
All right.
about. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Hey, I'm gonna bring something down. How's it going?
Oh, thank God.
All right.
Hey,
Am I in?
yes, you're in. Can you hear us?
Sweet.
Can you hear
I
us?
can.
Yeah.
Give me a sec. Let me pop you on my screen so people aren't confused. What the hell was that, by the way? I didn't understand a single thing that was being said.
It would be hard if you weren't in DMs.
Sulfur has an
hard
issue,
for
or
other
Tom has an issue with Sulfur's characterizations in DMs versus in public. Sulfur said, yes, I was in a way schizo posting, and I did not mean that to be different than the tone that I had in DMs. However, I am going to have this tone, for that, but I retract statements if I said that you lied outwardly, and it will stick with at the very worst, mischaracterization of the statements that I've had. So that is the full of both issues on either end of that. May God have mercy on our souls.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I don't understand anything after you saying that, but I appreciate the attempt.
Yeah, 100% me either.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I've had exactly one experience that happened to her. That would be horrible. Don't interact with Tom.
So, Eggman, we were just watching the little compilation of you like talking about your credentials and whatnot, which was bold, by the way, considering what you were trying to pull with me the other day. But I am a little bit curious. So you mentioned that you I would like some clarity.
Wait, I didn't.
I beg your pardon, Tom. What? Why would you make such a... I kind of feel like if... Let's consider that violent sexual assault is a crime that most... How would you make a fucking list?
Didn't pull anything. I agreed with you on your claims. I disagreed with the difference between what it was that you were doing to Kyla in the way that you were characterizing it.
Your video thumbnail says stop misusing your credentials or stop something like that, right?
Yes, that was his claim that he argued with you on, and that's what you came on to argue with him about, and that's what you guys argued about. I got into it with you over whether or not there was a line between, and I think I did initially say, like, well, the Canada thing says, like, you have to have this degree or whatever. But I agreed with your characterization when you said it's like being a philosopher or whatever. Like, I agreed with that. I argued with you on the Kyla stuff.
All right, fair enough. So it appears you said in multiple places that you worked in linguistics. You've written papers in the plural that have been used at colleges and universities. You called yourself, what was it, a linguistic marketer or something, and you said this in the context of a debate in which you were talking about things like gender and whatnot, and you were floating them essentially to establish that, yeah, you know what you're talking about. You've done work in the field. Your work is used, et cetera, et cetera. Can you provide like clarity on what all these things mean? And then later on, you flip back a little bit and you
See, here's kind of the thing, too, right? Gender as a concept is something we all accept. And, like, to a certain degree, I think you can talk about gender. Also, let me know if you can't hear me. Talk about gender without never saying, well, I'm a fucking expert in gender. Because I know very few people who are experts in their own goddamn constantly talking about exploring it. Like, I'm an expert on gender is quite the statement. Like, isn't it enough to participate in the discussion? Like, well, I'm interested in my gender and how I express myself and how I relate to how other people and how they express themselves. It's a pretty, like, weird thing to want to be the expert in unless you want to deny the validity of self-expression.
You said something strange. You said to sick, I think. Actually, I wrote papers on the doc referring to your own paper, so I don't know what that means either.
I'm not I'm not. I would have to see that. I'm not sure.
Okay, well, simple question. You say you've written papers that are used in colleges and universities. You said this in multiple places. What do you mean?
Yeah. In the video last night, it happened between 1:35 and 1:49. I'll have somebody find the exact quote.
Okay, so
Persevere is kind of weird, but like he's prepared usually. That's more than you can say for most streams.
am I specifically clarifying the papers part?
What are they? How were they used in colleges and universities?
Okay, so when we did linguistic marketing, we had to do we had to use like studies sometimes.
Can I pause you here very quickly before you press on?
Yeah.
This pertains to my first question. When you say you did linguistic marketing, walk me through this. What do you mean when you say you were in linguistic marketing? Were you in a university department? Were you a student somewhere? You were part of a company? Were you under a specific title?
I was part of a company that was the specific title.
That was the title. So a linguistic
company,
marketer. They called you a linguistic marketer.
Yes, the title of the department was linguistic marketing.
Okay, so to be clear, when you call yourself a linguist, that is apropos of your job title at this company.
Correct.
May I ask about
just real quick? I have like repeated over and over that this doesn't actually encompass a whole thing of linguistics, and it's not like a massive amount of linguistics. It is like very specifically a study of language for rhetorical advantages.
Right, but you brought this up in the context of a debate on gender.
What did the marketing company do in terms of gender? What were they selling? Something as a gendered product?
You talk about how we use gender in linguistics.
Correct. And you saw my video going over this, right?
I saw about 75% of it. May I inquire as to the nature of this business? Food, services, entertainment, what is it? Legal?
Yeah, food services. So one was legal, and then two were like franchise companies that owned a bunch of different restaurants.
One was legal?
Yes, that's where I initially went to classes and learned all of this. It wasn't, sorry, my job was not legal. Sorry. The company was legal. My job was not legal.
Do you mean it was in the legal profession, like it was a law firm or something?
Yes, it was a law firm that had people calling and talking to people about mortgages and shit like that. It was.
And this law firm employed a linguistic marketer.
Yes,
it was called that. It was called. So
I'm more confused now than when we started. Legal firm talking about mortgages. So like before when we were talking about, but a legal firm would get involved in the event of a foreclosure. Like, unless it was refinance, but even that would be like banking. Let's carry on.
the exact same position at the law firm and at the fast food chain.
I honestly, I believe it was called that, but I don't remember because I do know that the common usage of language for the trade has changed numerous times. Gotcha. I don't remember at what point it changed with which job.
Okay. Tell me about these papers.
So when I refer to papers, I generally am talking about the gender doc, because when I say that it was used by a
when you're not generally referring to the paper, what are you referring to?
Professor, and I've said on stream, this could be that I was like misleading about this, or I said it in a poor way. But yes, there was a professor that worked with us because we had to use universities and shit like that sometimes. And yeah, there was a professor.
So we say worked with you. Is this with the fast food business or is this with the legal company?
Yes, with the fast food business.
Okay, so yes. A professor worked with. Can you say what the chain is?
It was Professor Hut. Nobody out pizzas the Hut.
No, I would rather
McDonald's,
not.
Pizza
I don't
Hut?
want people calling like my businesses or anything. Oh, it wasn't. They owned a ton of them. It was a bunch of different things. Pizza Hut was where I.
Okay, so the fast food chain is working with a professor. Continue, please.
Yes.
Okay.
So this department was working with the professor specifically, but so like in my interactions with him, we talked about my channel. We talked about the fact that I was like doing a bunch of studying on gender and trying to write a document on it, was doing videos on it and stuff like that. And initially I gave him what was the paper as.
We are still in quite a long way from establishing the concrete understanding.
I was continuing to work on it, continuing to write it, continuing to make it. And he said, like, this is kind of shitty. It's not finalized. Like, I would like to use this in my classes. So if you could eventually give
you'd like
me
to use a shitty paper.
Hang on, it's kind of shitty. I'd like to use it in my classes. So are you saying that you were the example of what not to do, Tom? The cautionary tale, such as it were?
Version. He liked the ideas that were being communicated. He didn't like the way that they were written. I did almost all of it on stream, like with people watching and going over stuff and just kind of putting more ideas and more notes and going,
So I can't help but notice too.
More.
So your entire gender document was stream of consciousness collaboration. I'm sure that wasn't a train wreck at all.
Arguments.
I can't help but notice.
So I gave him that, and then
I got you. I can't help but notice two things.
Just real quick. Well, just let me finish. Just real quick. Eventually, because a bunch of people keep asking about this. Eventually, I left the company, and I don't have like direct communication with him. The only communications that I had with him were through emails that were literally on my computer.
Did you leave the company? Was this
those emails outside of that?
Did you leave the company because of your identity fraud? Was this when you went to jail?
No, they had to do background checks on me beforehand.
That's why I'm asking if it was, did you leave the company because of that?
No.
Baskin Robbins always finds out.
Oh, no. This was, I got locked up in 2008. I think that was the last time I got locked up. And this started, I want to say around 2014, maybe around there. Yeah.
Okay. I can't help but notice two things, Tom. The first is that you've referred in this conversation to the paper in the singular. You've referred elsewhere to papers in the plural. So if you're going to say that your papers and your videos were used in colleges and universities.
Wouldn't papers and paper being singular and plural be linked and
that's why I said I could understand that part being miscommunicated, because I have talked about it in detail.
Because your achievements multiply, then it's a little strange. Now, the second thing I noticed though, Tom, is that you say this was one professor who wanted to use this. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Did he use it?
Is this professor employed by multiple colleges? Which actually is possible, not beyond the pale.
I would assume so. Again,
so you don't know.
Eventually left. I believe so. Yes, I believe so.
So you
said
speculate.
That he was going to use it and that he wanted a finalized version. But the only reason that I ever said plural for professors, and again, this probably is some speculation, is that there were other people in my chats, in my Discord, people who DM'd me saying, "Hey, I want to give this to my professor," or "Hey, we talked about this in my class and like we shared it."
My professor, I hate my professor and I want to torture him.
Can you produce any of these messages?
Possibly, yeah, sure. If I can go through. I've lost my old account. I got banned a while ago.
All right. So you preempted my second question, which is I can't help but notice that you referred, while referring to this one professor, you referred to it being used actively in colleges and universities, in the plural both. Right?
Yeah.
So just to be clear, what you would have to produce in order to establish that it's been used at colleges and universities is some kind of written evidence that it has been used at multiple colleges and multiple universities.
Yeah, if I wanted to prove that, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
But you made the claim.
You surely do want to prove that because you said it.
You made the claim, so yes, you should want to prove the claim. The claim is fundamental to your I have to retract my earlier statement. Holy shit. When Tom originally said it it sounded as if he could be in a position where he has, for example, collected other papers written by other people, which is not an uncommon academic activity, written on gender and language. His position is that he himself has provided to the corpus of information that is used in education. Worse, he's accusing professors of using this kind of information sans any kind of peer review process. I can't help but feel that this is a little bit of academic malpractice going on, if that's actually what's happened. I was being as generous as I possibly could, but Tom, no, Tom. Like, this is investigating Dean's investigating shit territory.
Well, if I think things hinge on that, then yes. If I want to prove the things that hinge on,
they hinge on that, Tom. They hinge on that very much.
That, then
well,
yes,
I would say your credibility, but I don't think that's really a threat anymore.
I again, the only reason that was brought up at the time was just to say that, like, they kept saying that I didn't understand what gender was, and that what I was calling gender was sex, and that what I was that I had never liked.
But you were calling gender descriptive instead of a category. They were correct in saying you don't understand what gender is. Tom, this is not good, Tom.
Thought about
yeah. So you were citing your expertise in the field. You were citing your background in the field, but your background in the field appears to be working for Pizza Hut without any background education. So when you
Pizza's the Hut.
When you say,
why
like,
are you saying? Hold on, wait, no, hold on, don't move past that. Why did you say appears to be working for Pizza Hut? Why did you say that? That's not what I said.
I'm just throwing a fast food. You said we agreed it was a fast food chain. I'm just tossing one out.
Okay,
Tom,
but you
Tom,
understand
this isn't the thing that you want to focus on. The specifics of what thing that Sunday naming a specific thing is a rhetorical device. Was you would understand if you had studied rhetoric and linguistics. Just a thought. Maybe I don't know. He's making a point. He's using rhetoric to buttress the point. Wasn't that your whole job, Tom?
That when you say I'm working for Pizza Hut, you understand you're communicating something very different than what would actually.
No, Tom. That's not what's happening here.
To be honest, is that I'm working for a franchise, like a big company, doing these things for them.
If we're going to be really particular, Tom, a franchise is an individual business owned by a private individual, provided and operated under the terms of a larger corporate body. You don't work for a franchise insofar as you work in a corporate office for a franchise, at least not usually. You work for a franchise and working directly for the franchisee. You were working for a company which has in and of itself franchise location. Just to be technical, Tom. Kind of a linguistic importance, Tom.
You are, like, being misleading when you say that.
No, he's not.
Not really, no. Because
no, he's not. He's making a rhetorical point. He is arguing that you are attempting to say that during your employment with a fast food company, you were approached by a professor to use your document in an unpeer-reviewed setting to teach students about something, in which case, like, yeah, he's being hyperbolic. Okay, hyperbole is a form of rhetoric.
The franchise,
you're misled by the way that I phrase things. I think it's pretty obvious that people are going to be misled, thinking that I worked in a
No, I'm pretty sure they won't be. I'm pretty sure they can make the distinction. They're not TomFoolery audience members here. They're Reservoir audience members.
A Pizza Hut or for a Pizza
Well,
Hut.
you called yourself a linguist, Tom, and you use this in the context of a gender debate to establish that you in fact knew what you were talking about. You cited this as a credential. I think for people to find out that actually what happened was you were employed by some nebulous franchise owner under this title, and I actually am not confident that you were, by the way, but let's run with that.
Right, so,
I think that's a little misleading.
No,
I don't think that's a little misleading. I think that's an overt lie.
Hold on. So again, when we're saying that like I'm citing these things as like my credentials to prove what it is that I'm saying is correct, what was it that I was making that argument to prove, and what was it that it was meant to what was the point?
It doesn't matter. Like, you could be trying to prove that the moon is made of cheese. The credential that you hold doesn't change the point of the argument. Like, I am a linguist, and I think the moon is made of cheese. I have papers on this. Okay. That doesn't change the fundamental fact that you have cited credentials that you do not have.
Point that it was meant to communicate.
Well, I think in the context of this conversation, you're trying to establish, as you just said, that you understood what the word gender actually meant. People were challenging your use of the word. In your gender doc that you said falsely was used at multiple colleges and universities.
Don't follow the bouncing ball. Just keep going.
So it was not to say that I was that I knew what I was talking about or anything like that. The point was to say that I was trying to get them to engage with the idea that like this is how we come to definitions, and I cited over and over.
But Tom, you don't know how we come to definitions. You're not.
But yeah. First of all, you don't come to definitions through colloquial usage. You come to definitions by common agreement. It's an epistemological process, not really a like decision that's made.
Hold on. I allowed you to finish. Just wait. And so the point was to say that, like, if you go look in these dictionaries, they will say what it is that I'm saying. I am still referencing an authority for the.
Okay, I am a linguist. Therefore, if you look in dictionaries, they will. I looked it up in the dictionary. What? I'm becoming more confused all the time, Tom.
Them to go to. I am asking them to trust.
If if the job could be done by a fucking dictionary, why'd they hire you, Tom? It would be much cheaper to buy a copy of the dictionary. Fuck, it's online. They wouldn't even have to buy the copy. Holy shit. That's an incredible turn of events where he turns around and argues that I am an expert in this thing that is a function that can be performed by a dictionary. Me too, I guess. Jesus, fuck.
Trust me enough to go look at that authority.
Yeah, that's what citations do.
I'm not referencing myself as the authority.
Yeah, Tom, but you didn't say go look at the dictionary. You said I'm a linguist, and this is how we use gender in my field.
No,
that's what you said. Yes, yes. Coming back to the concept of category errors, it would also be a category error to say that TomFoolery is a dictionary. It's funny, but it's a category error.
Yes, that is what the conversation was about.
That's what you said, though.
Correct in how we come to.
That's what you said, though.
How we. Wait, what is it that I said?
That's what you said. You said.
He doesn't even know what the hell he said. The entire conversation hinges on what he said. I'm just going to say it, Tom. The dictionary knows what it says all the time, permanently.
I am a linguist, so I know how these terms are used.
You'll have to pull that up. I don't.
I'm gonna turn around and write on my dictionary copy in my office. I am a linguist. I just put it on the front cover.
No, I don't. I just watch it on stream. It's there.
That's what I'm saying.
I don't know what you think you're doing here exactly, Tom. Nobody watches you. Like the overwhelming number of people who watch this conversation are on other channels. Even Reggie's bigger than you now. Here's the.
There wasn't another. I don't know what you think you're doing, but
I'm explaining reality to you, Tom.
That I worked.
I wouldn't get into audience size. I think what Tom needs to know, if someone's hiring a dictionary.
Explaining reality. I'm saying you lying doesn't work.
No, you're lying. You're misrepresenting this. What I said was I work in linguistics.
I'm lying that I'm explaining reality to you? I don't think so.
I just said that we should pull it up because I'm saying that what I actually said was that I worked in linguistics and that I have like.
But you didn't work in linguistics, Tom. You've never worked in linguistics.
That's a different claim.
Why would they hire you if you have no education in linguistics, Tom? That makes no sense. Why would they hire you? But what was the credential? What did you use to sell your? How did you get into a linguistic marketing job? What was the condition?
Why are you pivoting?
I'm not pivoting. I'm not pivoting. I'm not pivoting. The longer I listen to you talk, the more questions arise. Why would you be working as a linguistic marketer if you have no linguistic background? Do you have a marketing background?
All right, everybody, Sunday, allow him to respond.
I'm just gonna do a thing here. And now that I'm gonna do this, marketing development associate. Now you could see a town near my address. Digital marketing manager. Content strategist. Senior marketing insights manager. Marketing manager. Senior product marketing manager. I don't see linguistic marketing anywhere. Where is linguistic marketing? Let's try the capital of marketing in the West Coast. Marketing specialist for healthcare. This is curious. There does not seem to be linguistic marketing anywhere.
Allow him to just keep pivoting and talking over me like this.
That's fine. I'm going to give you the floor. Take a minute. Okay, take a minute. Go ahead.
So the claim again was that I worked in linguistic marketing, and then I have also said a million times on my stream, I like the experience that I got from this only like gave me the ability to maybe look at these things better and research these things a little bit better. But I'm not an authority. I'm not an expert, and I have a broad pattern of saying these things a million times over to where I make sure that yes, like I am not I'm not trying to like fool people of this in any way.
Sure thing.
Linguistic marketing is an area of knowledge that studies the manifestation of linguistic means in the marketing communication texts. The only reference I can find to linguistic marketing is in Russia. No linguistic marketing jobs, Tom.
Do you have any academic background in marketing? Have you gone to school for marketing?
No, I wouldn't say.
No, so you didn't go to school for linguistics, clearly, and you didn't go to school for marketing. So they got this company that is reaching out to professors hired you for linguistic marketing. Why?
They sent me to classes.
They sent you to classes.
In the videos. As I said in the videos, literally one of them is me talking to you and you asking me about this. And
Tom, that's not good. Tom, that's not good. That's not a good answer, and I'll tell you why. The first thing you said was you worked at a legal firm. That was your original place of employment. You called that linguistic marketing as well.
I said that they sent me 2 classes.
And then you just the legal firm did.
Yes,
do you have a history in law, Tom? Have you worked in law?
A law firm that I wasn't doing law. I already told you I wasn't.
Did you go to school for law?
No, I was.
Why would a law firm send you to classes then? Why would they invest in you going to classes?
Because they had a marketing division, as I said in the video.
You don't have a background in marketing, Tom. Why were you working for the marketing division of a legal firm?
You said that we don't need to reference these things because everybody already saw it. But if everybody already saw it, they already know.
Oh no, I'm just asking you. I'm just asking separate questions. This isn't even in the video. I'm just asking you. I'm just asking you because what you're saying makes no sense, Tom.
You're asking because you're digging and you're trying to conflate things so that you can try to.
Oh, it's a very simple. Well, no. See, I actually wouldn't have caught on to this at all, Tom. I actually wouldn't.
Hold on.
I actually wouldn't have caught on to this at all, Tom.
Hold on.
If you hadn't walked back the statement
President,
that it was called a linguistic marketer at the legal firm.
Things that you're saying, you gotta let me respond to things.
All right, something has exploded. Let me see what's happening with the stream here. You do. right, welcome back from our self-imposed technical difficulty. Let's pretend I'm smart.
That you're saying, okay?
Well, take the time that I'm giving you now to respond. Stop whinging about it.
All right.
Burning daylight here.
If you had actually watched the videos and where we go over all this stuff in my video.
No, I'm responding to what you just said now, Tom. We're not talking about the videos.
What it is that I'm saying, President Sunday.
Yeah, I know. You want to waffle on and on. It doesn't matter. Nobody gives a shit. It's boring for me. I kind of want to just get to the point, you know?
It shows that you don't know what you're talking about. So just hold on a second.
Tom, you don't even know what your job's called. You don't know what your job was called, Tom.
You can't, like.
Have you ever been to university at all?
I'm not going to say. I'm not going to say if this is what we're doing. You gotta let me talk.
No, it's a simple. I'm here to ask you questions. Did you ever go to university at all?
No, you're not adding a fifth question already.
It's a yes or no question, Tom. You can just answer quickly. Yes or no? Did you go to university?
It is correct, and I will answer it after I answer the other five.
Why don't you answer that first, and then we just move on? I'll let you talk.
Is this what you're doing, Resi?
Just say.
I can certainly see if Tom ever testified on his own behalf why he's been to jail.
Yes or no?
You're zonyaing me. That's what you're doing.
Oh, is that a ferret?
You're zonya on me, Resi.
What is that?
Is that what's happening?
No, it's not a ferret. What is that? Resi, what is that? Yeah,
it's not a possum.
You say that you're gonna.
Is that an actual possum?
I said earlier, I'm happy to talk to you. I was all excited. You're going to moderate, but if you're not going to moderate, then I don't know why I'm here.
I'm listening to you. You're just going back and forth. It seems like you're getting hits in. I have the audio for both of you evened out. You're both kind of just talking over each other. I mean, this is the thing. I don't think there is a discharacterization between this and your conversation with Sulfur, but it was just kind of like the other way.
No, every time I start talking, he starts talking over me, and he makes claims. I try to respond to them, and he adds a new claim, and then he asks a new question, and then he asks a new question.
But yes or no, Tom? Did you?
Well, Tom, a skilled linguist would understand that claims are not questions.
Go to university at all?
Possible for me to answer all of these things.
But just this one. Just this one. I'll be quiet. I'll be quiet for 2 minutes. I will be silent for 2 minutes. Tom, I'll be silent for 2 minutes. Did you go to university or not?
Sunday, I'm holding you to this. Okay.
Tom, did you go to university and for what?
No, I didn't. I haven't. Like, I've been to university, but not for any of these things. No.
You mean you've been onto a university campus?
No, like I had sorry, not a university, my bad. I went to a community college. I went to like school for this, but not for anything involved with marketing or linguistics. No.
Imagine my shock. All right, you got 2 minutes. Let's go.
Okay, so in the videos, I explained that I went to a law firm. I was working for them. They had a marketing department where people were selling mortgages, and in that department, they did they did send some of us in each in each, I don't know what you call it, in each office, they sent one person from each office to go to classes for these things. And then eventually I went and did other things, and then eventually went back to doing that and turned it into a career for a while.
Are you done?
Yes.
What did you do for the...
Who was the mortgage? Who was the law firm selling mortgages to? What? I have more questions.
The law firm that you had no university credentials for, that they were sending you to classes. They were paying out of pocket to send you to classes. What were you doing?
So my title was mortgage consultant, but I didn't know anything about mortgage.
So you were at a law firm which was selling mortgages for a mortgage consultant who did not know anything about mortgage. I'm just curious, did this law firm possess any lawyers?
You were a mortgage consultant.
Yeah, that was the title, yeah.
But you thought it was linguistic marketer before. You just plumb forgot and you thought you were a linguistic marketer?
I started as a mortgage consultant, and then they sent us to classes. You asked me what I was doing there initially.
They send you to classes in linguistics? Were the classes in linguistics? Were they linguistics classes?
Yes, that is what
you went to linguistics classes. Really?
That it's called linguistic marketing.
Oh, the class was called linguistic. I thought you said the job was called linguistic marketing, Tom.
It is a entire profession and labeled linguistic marketing. Yes.
If I may, Tom, are you saying you got hired at this place? You were doing these call scripts. They sent you to education to get better at it, and then you were in a linguistic marketing position as a promotion.
Not as a promotion. That was like a new position that they were starting there that they had for the.
So a side promotion thing.
So it was a lateral promotion or lateral transfer. Like a linguistic.
So you changed job titles from like the initial point of view working at the law firm to the point where you went through the classes and you took up a position in linguistic marketing, according to you.
Yes, they send you the classes, and then they eventually have you come back and they have you write scripts for everybody, and they have you go through processes to come up with the best way for people to answer calls.
And that's what they titled a linguistic marketer.
Yes, like I don't know.
Which
I could be wrong. That's the name of it, but that is the name of the industry.
You don't know the name of your.
Okay, if you've ever worked in a call center, provide you things to, and they're usually pretty anal. There are people, if they work in a call center where their job is relatively secured, such as union call, ignore the script and goddamn job. The person who writes the script is the most ignored person in a call center. Still have not squared the goddamn circle of what the law firm was doing selling mortgages.
Your course now. Okay, question for you, Tom. Which institution?
What?
Which institution? Where did you take this course?
They were in office buildings. What do you mean, which institution?
Which university or college, Tom?
So this was a corporate training.
I told you I didn't go to a university or college. Why are you asking?
You said you went to a community. Well, then where did you? Well, hang on, slow down. So, wait a sec.
Oh,
so when you say they sent you to classes, you mean
specific law courses?
Wait, no. Hang on. Wait a minute. The picture's being painted in my head. Wait a minute, Tom. So let's throw out the legal. I don't think that ever happened. So you worked for a fast food franchiser who sent you to classes in an office building. You worked in fast food, didn't you?
Wait. Hold on. Repeat that again.
You worked for a franchiser who sent you to classes in an office building.
No, that is not at all. Is that what you think I said?
No, I think that's what you did.
That's corporate training, Tom. You took a corporate seminar. Oh, holy.
I don't buy for a second. I don't buy for a second that you were a mortgage consultant. I don't buy for a second that I don't buy.
Okay, this is be like, so for example, when I worked as a call center rep, we had one day a year that was training day. Went to a hotel down their conference center, and we all got in the conference. And we basically knocked out like 4 or 5 big training modules here, and then we had presentations. This included lunch. This would be like me fucking a training day seminar saying, well, I ate lunch with the CEO because she was 7 tables over from me.
Buy for a second that a company sent you to classes.
Why do you think it? Why? What is the logic there?
Well, let's think about what we.
Because the logic is insane. Like, I'm a mortgage consultant that know anything mortgages, so they sent me to an unrelated school to learn an entirely different skill set to supplement a skill that I do not have that I was hired for. Oh, Jesus. This is obviously a pack of lies on Tom's part. Subscribe to Two Guys Talking History.